this new season of life, we are trading the familiar hills of Tennessee for the vibrant streets of Cambodia, known as the Kingdom of Wonder.
In 2025, God shifted our gaze to Phnom Penh, the capital city of Cambodia. We are preparing to serve as lead pastors of International Christian Assembly, ICA. Located on the campus of the Cambodia Bible Institute, ICA is a unique church that ministers to a diverse mix of English-speaking expatriates and locals.
Phnom Penh is a convergence point for people from Asian, African, and Western cultures who have come to work, retire, or seek refuge. However, the spiritual need is immense. In a nation that is estimated to be 95% Buddhist and only 2% Christian, our mission is to shepherd this international community while reaching the local Cambodian people with the hope of Jesus.
Our work extends beyond the walls of the church. We will also serve as instructors at the Cambodia Bible Institute, training the next generation of Cambodian pastors. As part of the Cambodia Assemblies of God, we are committed to partnering with national leadership to plant churches in provincial capitals that currently have little to no gospel presence.
Additionally, we have a burden for the next generation of missionaries. We plan to use our ministry as a hub for American students called to missions, offering them short-term internships to experience the field and pray about long-term service.
Author David Jones wrote, "Some have gone down into the gold mine of souls. Those who remain above must hold the ropes."
As we prepare to go down into the gold mine of Cambodia, we're looking for partners to hold the ropes. Would you hold our ropes through prayer? And would you consider supporting us as we endeavor to reveal the true wonder of the gospel to those calling the Kingdom of Wonder home?
Thank you for having us here. We enjoyed the first service.
We are Greg
and looking forward. Well, we can go again. And looking forward to this service as well and being able to share with you. I guess you could say I'm native to Memphis. I grew up here since I was 5. So, and ended up meeting a couple folks today that went to First Assembly Christian School or are going. And that's where I went. That's where I graduated from. So I lived all of my growing up life here. My wife is from Murfreesboro, in the center of the state, and so if you want to know how we got together, that's a table thing back there. We could talk about that, but I want to show you where we're going. So I'm going to give you a couple maps here. So if we can go to the first slide. Yeah, I just thought it helps because I actually have had somebody go, "Oh, so you're going to Colombia?" And I go, "No, it's on the other side of the world." You missed it a little bit. I did actually have a guy one time that was talking to me. He says, "So you're gonna learn Spanish?" And I went, "Spanish?" I said, I'm going to Cambodia." And I'm thinking, I only wish I was learning Spanish. If you see the letters and see the words, you'll know what I'm talking about. So, it is actually, if you are from the era of the Vietnam War or know anything about or have studied some of that history, then you'd know some things about Cambodia. You know where it's at. It's sandwiched between Vietnam and Laos and Thailand. And so it's over in that area, and what we would call Southeast Asia, or what the Assemblies of God would call Pen Asia. That's the area that we're in. The other map is like, so what is that? Well, I'm just showing you I'm putting where China is and color coding it in orange, and then our country that we're going to is in green, just to kind of give you some perspective about the size and where it's at in the world. And in Phnom Penh, there are Chinese people, there are Vietnamese people, there are Thai people, there are folks from the West, there's folks from islands and I'll have my wife tell you in just a few minutes, in the place that's going to be our primary directive for ministering in the church, there's people from Fiji, there's people from Africa, there's people from all over the world, and at least 30 nations within that context. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to show you two pictures here. The first one on the left is it's actually a structure within a larger Buddhist temple complex. And so I thought I just want to have that picture to say that is Cambodia's state religion. That's their national religion. That is what most of the people in Cambodia have grown up knowing and understanding. That's their worldview. 95%. It's only 2% Christian, and I would sit down and say only 2% Christian of any stripe. And what I mean by that is I'm not talking about the difference between like Baptist, Pentecostal, or this or that. I'm talking about you would even clump Christian cults into that, like Mormons and stuff, because downtown Phnom Penh has a large Mormon temple as well. So we're going to be dealing with all of that in that greater context we're going to be in that greater culture we're going to be in. I look forward to being able to sit down in coffee shops or markets and build relationships with people that have come from a Buddhist background. Because that's what it ends up being. It's not so much standing behind a pulpit and seeing people saved. It's getting out among them and bringing the gospel to them. This other monument I put on here, and the reason I put on here, there's a monument I would have preferred to put on there just to kind of give you more of a visual, but it might be scary for kids, and so that's why I didn't put that on there. It says this on the monument. It says, "Never will we forget the crimes committed during the democratic Kampuchea regime." Does anybody know in this place what's being referred to as the democratic Kampuchea? I know that. I know this person over here does. Anybody else in here? Has anybody ever heard of a group called the Khmer Rouge in your history books? Oh. We have, yes. Anybody over here who raised their hand? Oh, you have somebody that did. Okay, so the Khmer Rouge, that was a communist regime. They referred to, during that time period, Cambodia as the democratic Kampuchea. Now, democratic is a misnomer, okay? They threw that on top of it, but it was a communist, and I would dare say it was the most cruel communist regime that's ever existed. Not because they killed more people under the regime. Certainly Stalin and Mao killed more people, but they killed a larger percentage of their own people, as far as because back then Cambodia wasn't even near the size it is now, and they killed a quarter of the population, slaughtered them, killed them, threw them into mass graves, emptied the cities out, and turned everybody into farmers. Now, I don't know about you. How many in here are farmers? Okay. My grandfather was a farmer. I didn't work on his machinery. I didn't get out in the field. I don't know anything about raising soybeans or rice like he did. He loved it. In fact, I didn't like Arkansas because it was flat. But he loved it because it was flat. And that means crops can be grown there. So he knew about that. But here's the problem. You put me out in the field and say, grow a crop, and I'm in trouble. That's what happened with these people. They were in trouble. See, they're trying to create an agrarian utopia, and many of them died. They killed off the intellectuals, the people with education. If you wore glasses, they assumed you had education, so they killed those folks off. It's just a really horrific time period. Now, everybody in here's heard about the Vietnam War. Well, that was, Khmer Rouge had power from 75 to 1979. The Vietnamese actually ran the Khmer Rouge out of power, ran him into the jungles, and then they took over for about 10 years in Cambodia. And but it's that's a dark past. And there's a whole lot more to that we won't go in here. But I wanted you to know that because they have Buddhism over there, a worldview, but then they also have a past that has affected them to this day. Post-traumatic stress disorder. We often hear about that with veterans. half the country suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder here. Even people that weren't alive during that time. Because parents pass things on from just their children living with them and seeing how they're dealing with life. And so that's the context in which we will be.
Go to the next slide, please. So what will we be doing there? So the first and primary objective is that we're going to pastor ICA. ICA stands for International Christian Assembly. So the Assemblies of God World Mission has ICA churches all throughout the world in major metropolitan cities, and they're English-speaking churches. They're for expatriates that move into that country for work or retirement, or maybe they're escaping their country from persecution and they need a place to worship. And so English is their second language. Obviously, English is our first language. In our particular church in Cambodia, in Phnom Penh, it represents 30 different languages. Obviously, we can't learn all 30 different languages. We will learn Khmer, which is the language spoken by the Cambodians, because we want to reach the Cambodians. We want to bring them to a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ. So the first primary objective is to pastor this church. The second objective is to prepare nationals. We also have the privilege of teaching at the Cambodian Bible Institute. And that's so important because we'll be able to give tools to the next generation of pastors and leaders and missionaries and church planters. And it's also important because there are 10 providential capitals in Cambodia. Providential capital is kind of like a state, like how we would view states here. So there's no churches in 10 of them. There's actually 24 total of the providential capitals in Cambodia, and 10 do not have a church whatsoever. So who best to plant churches than the locals? They are immersed in the culture, they are immersed in the language, they are immersed in the history. So by God's grace, He'll be able to use us to help give tools to them so they can go out and plant those churches. Number 3 is pipelining global workers. And this is really exciting. It's not something we can start right away. We'll have to get our feet wet and get established over there. But once we're there and we're established, we want to set up an internship programs for American students who feel a call into missions. They can come live with us for 6 months to a year. They'll still do their work online, and then we will send them out a week here, a week there to go shadow missionaries in the country of Cambodia to get a feel of what it's like to be a missionary, whether it's working with orphanages, medical missions, or whatever. So they have that idea, and then they can pray about a lifetime of ministry. Greg and I are in our 50s, so there's no way we'll be able to give 50 more years, but someone in their 20s might be able to do that. The next slide. All right. Okay. There's our Spanish. We couldn't find our Spanish slides earlier, but that's okay. So this is basically showing, how can you partner with us? 2 ways. As we're just like all other missionaries, we have to raise a budget. By God's grace, we're at 63%. So obviously we need 100% before we go on the field. So if you feel so led, you can partner with us for that. And then also prayer. If we have all the money that we need today and we go over there, but we don't have a prayer support, then we're not going to make it. When we went to visit Cambodia a year ago, we went to one of their temples, and as soon as I got out of the car and walked onto the property, I could feel the spiritual oppression in my chest. I could feel it. And I saw families doing rituals, bowing before idols. And I saw children in the outskirt of the temple, riding their bikes just like our kids here would ride bikes. And my heart broke because they are in total darkness. And so Satan has deceived a whole group of people and believe in a lie of Buddhism, and they're going to hell. And so we need the prayer support that God would help us to be effective and to communicate well and give us divine appointments so that we can reach those moms, reach those dads, reach those children for Christ. Then the next slide. All right, it says, do you sense a call to mission? Many times people, when they feel that call or that stirring, or maybe they're not even sure if they're called, but they have an interest in missions, a lot of times it's a daunting task because you don't know where to go from here. So we make things a little easy for you. You can scan that QR code, and if you can't for some reason open it up here, then we have it on Greg's phone. You can meet us at the table in the back. You can scan that QR code. It will go to a link that will be a form where you fill out information about yourself. And all that it does is it starts the conversation with someone at the Assemblies of God World Mission. Doesn't sign you up to go on the mission field or even go on a mission trip. It just simply starts that conversation with someone who's been there, done that, and can help guide you along the way. And then the last slide, if you have any questions, please come by and visit us and pick up a prayer card with prayer cards, and then we also have ways to pray for Buddhists. Thank you.
All right, cool. We're going to switch the topic, still staying on the something that's native to Cambodia, but let's go to that other, good, cool. Now, let me ask you a question, guys in the back. Can I go on the floor here? Or is it going to make it's not going, okay. Just don't want to be that guy. But I do want to get down here because I like to walk around and my wife's afraid I'm going to fall off or whatever. So I want to give you a message this morning that is going to be applicable to you here in the States, as well as somebody that was going overseas. Okay, so I don't want you to check out and just think I'm talking strictly to people that are going to be ministering to Buddhists or strictly to people that are going to be ministering to Cambodians, okay? And this is something that the principles can go across the board. So we're going to talk about sharing the gospel with somebody. And you go, oh, well, I know how to share the gospel. Well, sometimes we assume too much about people. We assume that somebody that a lot of times, and I'm not saying that every time maybe you do this, maybe for you this isn't even an issue, but sometimes we assume, hey, I can share with them the gospel and they'll understand it. They'll get it. They'll understand. Yeah, Jesus came, he died for your sins. He's going to make a way for you. When you die, you go to heaven and all this kind of stuff. So we'll start talking about these type of things. But what we're doing is we're talking to people, assuming they have a knowledge and the background of a biblical worldview that we have. Now, let me say this. When we go to Cambodia, the people on the streets and in the country, 95% of them, and about 98+% of them, even beyond that, because 95% of them have a Buddhist background, but then there's another 3% that have an other background. Might be Muslim or some other type of situation. And so we're talking about almost the entire population does not have a biblical worldview. So when we come and we give the gospel, there's a place that we do not want to start. So go to the next slide. John 3:16. Now, how many of y'all, you would say John 3:16 is true, right? You would probably say that. Well, I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just saying I wouldn't start there. Because that assumes that they understand the phrases of that verse. And if somebody doesn't have a biblical worldview, doesn't have a background, they've never heard any of this stuff, then how are they going to understand the gospel that is with 39 other books before it, 4,000 years of history before it, and then we're going to start where? In the Gospels. So we got to start and lay a foundation so they can understand the gospel. Understand, when you read the New Testament, the authors quoted the Old Testament dozens and dozens and dozens of times. Why? Because the New Testament is the fulfillment of those Old Testament scriptures, of which we're fixing to show in just a few minutes. So it's like they were giving, hey, guys, this is the fulfillment of that. So if you just come in and you give them the fulfillment, but they don't understand what it is a fulfillment of, or they don't understand the need they have, then it's falling on deaf ears. And especially in a country where they do not have that background. Now, I am not saying that they are not culpable, blameworthy of breaking God's law. I'm not saying they're not blameworthy of ignoring God, because God tells us in Romans, like for instance, areas like Romans chapter 1, Psalms chapter 19, that everybody can see that the Creator exists because of the creation around him are like fingerprints, and the fact that they have a conscience, a knowledge of right and wrong. Okay, so God says, hey, everybody knows that I exist. But that doesn't mean everybody knows the redemption story and the specifics. And also, that doesn't mean that people that are like in places like Cambodia haven't had for generations shoved into their head false teachings, false religions that they have accepted over time through fear, coercion, tradition, family. The other thing is, I'm not going to get into a lot today, but I'd say an obstacle for Christians sharing the gospel overseas and in a place like Cambodia is that, like especially in a place like Cambodia, Cambodia gets their national identity from Buddhism. So in other words, here you can become